Start letting people in.
No, I'm not.
Okay, Aloni, we're on.
You're on. Go. I'm like, chat, baby.
Mingle.
I mingle. I chat.
I get more out of them.
Yeah, you don't annoy
Where's my
me.
phone?
I'm already ready.
The silent one. Silent but deadly.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Milk and Honey Purim tasting. Get going in a little bit and start making a lot of noise, drinking a lot of whiskey. Very soon I'll introduce Oded and Tal from Milk and Honey Distillery in Tel Aviv. Nice and early in the morning for them to be drinking whiskey, but they don't mind. They do this all the time. Feel free to ask questions on the chat. If you really need to, you can unmute yourself and ask away. We'll be going through the 4 different whiskies. You each should have, if you should have received them, 30 mils of each. Now, normally we do a face-to-face tasting. We do 15 mil serves. There's no obligation for you to drink everything in front of you, even though most of you are at home. You can keep some for later. If you like the challenge, we'll go for it. We've got these nice, fantastic Milk and Honey Glencairn glasses, and really looking forward to covering the range. We'll wait another couple of minutes for people to join. Just make sure you've got a nice glass of water, maybe your little geeky pipette if you want to add water to your whiskies. We don't judge, or your bottle of Coke. So, Dad, what's the? We're getting a lot of press about how Israel is managing COVID with the vaccine and being treated as, I won't call you guinea pigs, but certainly test cases. Okay, we'll call you guinea pigs. You're the guys of the guinea pigs.
I was wondering what the impression people get abroad about the whole operation. Actually, both Tal and I already got our second Pfizer vaccine, so are officially vaccinated. But yeah, just it's funny because over 4 million people in Israel are already vaccinated. That's almost half the population. But then again, we are one of the top 10 countries in contagion per 1,000 people. So there is this weird balance between the getting vaccinated and a lot of people still getting COVID. But we're hoping to get better. And they say they might open the pubs in a few weeks. And apart from the flights, that's what we're most looking for. We really want to see the inside of a pub again. It's been so long.
Well, you're living inside one at the moment, I can see. I don't know what you guys are complaining about.
So yeah, actually in the past few weeks, well, months, well, year, we've made the distillery into our own local pub in which the crew can end up the day with a nice pint. We have our own tap. Tal will actually demonstrate the miracle of the tap. Yay! We have our own craft beer. Cheers! Here in the distillery.
Well, of course, you do.
We have some whiskey. Not a lot of it, but we have some whiskey lying about. So we drink some of that too. Some nice gin, here and again.
Well, for those of you who aren't familiar why the hats are out, is that this tasting is scheduled to coincide with tomorrow night, the start of the Jewish festival of Purim, which celebrates how the Jews in Persia were saved by the bravery of just a few. And there's a few traditions relating to Purim. It's a joyous festival, and part of it is dressing up. Not only the children, but the adults get into the swing of things, fancy dress. You're allowed to take an extra sip if you can work out what I'm supposed to be dressed as. And also, the tradition is to drink enough so you get to the point you can't tell the difference between the bad guy and the good guy. So that starts tomorrow night. So this is really a dress rehearsal.
For us, it's every day, really. Yeah.
Well, it's only binge drinking if you stop. So keep going.
Actually, I think that tomorrow they're playing a kind of a night curfew just to stop the festivals and the parties because they don't want people together. Even though I think that 40% of the population or something like that already got vaccinated from the ages that needed to get vaccines. So, but we remember what happened last year that they told people, you know, it was just starting. Don't gather around, and there's festivals all over the city and the country. So from tomorrow they're gonna watch it for the next weekend, and then we'll see because things are starting to open finally.
Yeah. So you guys are our Purim party for this year. Hey.
Right, so guys, I think we'll get into it. We're going to be drinking the four whiskies, the classic and the three in the Element series. If you're looking at purchasing any of these whiskies that you might like, and please, even if you aren't, go into the whiskey list, thewhiskylist.com.au, or the whiskey list app in both the Apple and the iPhone stores, and you can rate the whiskies, and you can see where you can buy them in Australia in price order. So it's the whiskey list without an e.com.au. That'll show you where you can get these whiskies. So what we like to do is a lot of these people have had these whiskies staring at them for a few days now. We don't mess around. So I think if we can start off with the classic. Leave it to Oded and Tal to take you through that particular whiskey, and then we'll talk more about the distillery, your philosophy, and what's coming up next. So we're looking at the classic now. The guys they designed these fantastic labels for our sample bottles. Really did a good job of that. You can use them to refill with anything else.
So first of all, I want to welcome everyone and thanks for joining us, guys. I love these kind of international parties. Of course, I'm dying to fly anywhere they take me. You know, we have green passports in our phones now, and so we need to go somewhere. So I'll be happy to come and visit you, or anywhere, really, anywhere that takes me. I've been stuck in the same country for a whole year. So welcome to Tel Aviv. And let's have the first drum, and then we can talk about it. Because I think first of all we need some whiskey in our palates. Cheers. L'chaim.
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 Right. So when we're talking about the classic, we call it the classic, but it's not. It hasn't been around for that long. We've grown used to it, but the classic was actually launched back at December of 2019, just over a year ago, and it was our first commercial expression. So we've been active since 2012. We built up this distillery, which we're sitting in now. You can see the stills behind us. We've been here since 2014, and our first commercial large-scale whiskey was the classic back then. Its composition is 80% ex-bourbon, which contributes a lot of the sweetness and the gentler flavors. It is 15 to 18% STR, which are ex-red wine casks that have been shaved, toasted, and recharred to adjust them to the local hot climate. It's a method developed by Dr. Jim Swan. I guess we'll elaborate on that a bit later. And the final few percent is just virgin oak to round things up, give just a little bit of depth. And that's what we get in the classic. Now, you might know other hot climate distilleries like Kavalan and Amrut. A lot of the expressions that we get from hot climate distilleries and New World distilleries are usually very out there, very in your face kind of expressions, because of the deep maturation of the strong effect of the cask. What we're looking to do here is actually to create a balanced expression to overcome the obstacle of having a lot of casks that are very flavorful, and to achieve that balance between the sweet, the spicy, the deep, but also the light.
Try to get another thing is that the texture and the mouthfeel. Sometimes in the upper part of the palate, you can actually get some oiliness and some thickness. And this is a part of what we do. Because of the hot climate, we need a very thick and oily new make. We cut it very high and very short. the stills. So the heart of the still starts at 80% alcohol, and we cut it down at 70% alcohol. We actually thought that this is what all hot countries do, but when we had a talk with Ian Chan, we discovered that Kabbalah is having much wider heart, and they cut lower in the tail. So so we are, the guys are working here, and I don't know about what. So we cut the heart, very clean and very fruity heart, and then we miss some oils because a lot of the essential oils are going to be at the tails. But we gain it back when we have the line arms of the stills, which we try to show with the camera later on, but both of the stills are going at 45 degrees down. You can see the line arms now. That means that the vapors go up and just comes down straight to the condenser. It doesn't do any reflux. If we have this kind of an angle, some of them will go back in, and what we call a reflux is a kind of another step of distillation. So we lose some of the body when you get this kind of a reflux. So we cut very high and very short. It's an average of 73% alcohol when we go when it goes out of the spirit safe. And again, because of the line arms, you get some oiliness, and I think you can actually feel that. We need that because of our rapid maturation, because of the climate in Tel Aviv, which Adele is going to talk about it in a second. So cheers again.
So cheers again. So I'll just add that we look at the Classic as our sort of entry-level whiskey, not price point-wise, but more than it is a sort of an introduction to the rest of our portfolio. It's a good first step to understand what we do here and what we deal with here, and that will have to do with the climate. So, by the way, David, do you want us to put a presentation on to show some pictures of Tel Aviv?
Well, it's we've got an hour. As long as we can cover all 4 whiskeys, we're in your hands. Just a question while we can go for a few minutes on your travelogue. But just a couple of questions on your casks. Australia also with a relatively hot climate. A lot of the distilleries here use smaller casks, 50 and 100 liters. Do you standardize on the size of cask at all?
Actually, our casks are mostly ex-bourbon that we get from Kelvin Cooperage in the US. So our standard cask size is between 200 liters for the ex-bourbon, and then it goes just a bit up to 225 for the ex-red wine. We got some bigger casks, we got some smaller casks, but we don't get or purchase specifically small casks for what we do. What we have here, climate-wise, is that we're actually situated a 7-minute walk away from the Tel Aviv beach. And Tel Aviv is a city that has 300 days of sunshine a year. Even right now, I'm wearing this hat and this sweatshirt, but outside, I mean, you see Tal, he's walking around with a t-shirt. We don't actually have winter in Israel. We have summer, mild summer, war, and elections. That's all the seasons that we have. That's our 4 seasons. So what happens is that because we are in Tel Aviv and we have a very hot climate throughout the year, which is also quite dynamic, it's between
fireworks. Should I tell them they can pick up the
as low as 80 degrees, but in summer you can get as high as 45, 47 degrees and up to 90% humidity. So what happens with the casks is that they actually go through a process of like exercise, like rapid breathing. They keep expanding and shrinking, expanding and shrinking. And then what happens is that we have a very strong climate effect. The maturation is much faster, much deeper. And so after 3 to 4 years, we can get the same effect, the approximate effect of the equivalent of 10 or 12 years in Scotland, because the sun does so much of the work. And our job, in part, is to make sure that the casks are actually not overly mature.
We got some, we received some 113 and 56 liters casks from
from America. So they used to have, I think, used to contain it's either ex-bourbon or ex-rye. And when we're using the 56 liters just for an experiment, it's too much. It's getting too oaky, too fast. Sometimes, as Oded said, the differences between night and day, the differences between the very humid summer with the 40 degrees, 38 degrees, 90% humidity to this winter that we actually had. Tonight was 9 degrees, now it's 20, 21, and very dry. So winters are dry, summers are very humid. You know, it's expands and shrinks and anything. So 56 liters can get you, you know, over oakiness even in 1 year. This is why we usually don't use anything less than 200 liters.
Yeah. So it is a challenge. It is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity, because what we get after just a few years is a very flavorful and aromatic whiskey. We can get a lot from each of the casks, and it makes it possible for us to balance them after 3 to 4 years and get the classic, for example, which is roughly, I would say the different casks are 4 years old in here. But still, by the way, we'd love to hear your comments on the classic and your questions on the classic. But this is a very good demonstration of the blend that we can get in rapid maturation and still balance it out to make a very accessible kind of whiskey.
In December, this one actually won number 20 in the world in the Whiskey Advocate magazine, the American Whiskey Advocate magazine. Choose this one to be among the best 20 whiskeys in the world. So for us, you know, it was crazy. We didn't submit it, so we didn't know. And there's another thing that happened like 2 weeks ago. We didn't submit anything. We went to sleep on Friday and Thursday night, and we woke up around 11:30 or midnight, just hearing the buzz with WhatsApps. We won the best craft producer in the year, in the world. But again, we didn't submit ourselves, so it was a surprise for us. Of course, we went drinking until 5 o'clock in the morning because of that. But yeah, it was like, you know, yeah, really, you know.
Yeah, we discovered it through a Facebook comment.
Yeah.
So just some user just posted congratulations, and we said thank you for what, and then we discovered that we won the prize.
Thank you, Muhammad. And she said it's probably a book, but really, the guy that actually wrote in our Facebook page was Muhammad, someone, I think, from one of the, I think it was from England, I don't know, but you know, something, you know, those guys, sometimes you get all kinds of just someone that bugs your page, and he was like, whoa, guys, thank you, Muhammad. And we went to see if it's right, and yeah, we won.
That's a fun revelation.
That's fantastic, guys. They're very well done. It's a very crowded space, that, with a lot of craft distilleries popping up all over the world. So that's very well done.
Thank you. Cheers. So I think that if we're all talking about the special climate that we have here and whiskey in general, we can actually switch to wine. So how about we pour the Elements red wine while we talk about the origins of this expression. So first, about the Element series, you'll notice that
it's not even 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, we started late, didn't we? So the Elements in general. Well, the Element series is our second tier series. What we're looking to do with the Elements is, again, to create a balance between our more flavorful and interesting casks and the kind of character that we want our whiskey to have, that balance and complexity. So 50% of each elements, of each blend, is the same composition as the classic. It's ex-bourbon, some STR, and just a bit of virgin oak. And the other 50% is a full maturation of another cask that contributes a lot of flavor and aroma to that expression, and is the predominant character of that specific one. So now we're doing the Axe red wine. Now, we're the first Israeli whiskey distillery, and we started in 2012. That's quite late for speaking in worldwide terms. But Israel has had this weird history with alcohol. Distillation actually started here in this region, 3,000, 4,000 years ago or so. And then with the spread of Islam and the non-consumption of alcohol, kind of the, I guess it just went down the street, and the industry kind of faded out until the 20th century.
in which both in Lebanon and in Israel, wineries started to open. And Israel has had a very strong wining industry for the past, I would say, 40 years or so. I mean, it's been longer, but I think the recognition it got wasn't before, you'd say.
Well, first of all, 140, 150 years ago, the Baron Rothschild came here with and revived, revived the wine industry in Israel. Actually, they were doing something really logical and tried to get the right grape varieties to our climate. But then, the beginning of the 80s or 70s, everyone wanted to drink Merlot and Cabernet, so they started to plant Merlot, Cabernet, Chardonnay, and all kinds of international grape varieties around Israel, which we are a Mediterranean country in the hotter side of the Mediterranean. And I think that it goes now and goes back to all kinds of Carignan, Grenache, and stuff like that, alongside with a very interesting study about biblical time grapes, which are originally for the land of Israel. And we actually discovered something like 240 different grape varieties from the land of Israel originally. And now 3 or 4 of them were cultivated, and so 2 of the big wineries started to actually make wines out of those grapes. And we have some spirit aging in those kind of casks. So it's going to be something to look forward to. But just regular wines, if you take a different, just a Merlot or a Cabernet, it's going to be totally different than what you get in Europe because of our climate and because of our soil, the terroir and everything. And when you put this in our casks, it's going to be totally different. This was the hardest whiskey to make, first of all, because Tomer and actually myself, we don't like too much winey whiskeys, doesn't like the very powerful red wine effect on the spirit. So the thing was just to try to find a balance. Now, another problem was that in one batch you get a Merlot from the mountains of the Galilee, and in another batch you get a Carignan from the mountains of Jerusalem. Different wineries, different climate. We have 5 climate zones in 450 kilometers. So everything here is just try to build the puzzle back again. And like Tomer says, it's like making the same drawing with different paints every time. And I think that the balance here is something that we really look for. So you can actually feel it is a wine whiskey, it is a wine cask whiskey, but it's not overwhelming. What we get here is mostly dark fruits, some oak, but it's not like a whiskey oak. It's more oak you get in a very thick Rioja or something like that, or just a thick full-bodied Cabernet Sauvignon. And then the finish is kind of a dry finish, maybe some tannins from the wines, but it is still, it's based on the classic cask, so it is still a milk and honey classic with another wine element.
Well, just the first impression I get is just a really buttery, creamy mouthfeel to it. Now, the whole range, the classic and the elements, they're all 46% and non-chill filtered. Is that correct?
That is correct. And
So
no
again,
added
that
color.
oiliness.
Yeah.
So that's why you're getting that rich oiliness. It just coats the palate and really softens the effect.
Yeah, it's the original spirit without taking anything out when you chill filtration. We do chill filtration. For our climate, we don't need a chill filtration, but we did bottle some. I think 2 years ago we bottled new make at 40% and sent it to Poland, and it was -20 there, so it was full with sediments because the oils just got thick. So we don't do anything less than 46 ABV because of that.
And for some people who aren't familiar with the STR process, if you could explain what that means and where it comes from.
Right. So chill filtering is
STR.
STR. Oh, right. So going back.
This is what when you're drinking at 10:30 in the morning.
Oh yeah, I think it's
STR,
about chill filtering. Sorry about
chill
that.
filtration.
So the STR. So back in the day, Dr. James Swan, the late, unfortunately, Dr. James Swan, he still is one of the greatest experts for whiskey and for the chemistry of whiskey that have been prominent in the industry for the past few decades. And his life project was to open distilleries in countries that were not considered classic or I would say technically capable whiskey regions. So he excelled in opening distilleries in hot climates. I think that his most famous project is Kavalan in Taiwan, Amrut, Kilchoman, Tenderin, and many others were his projects to open up distilleries in places that can actually make perhaps whiskey that is original and different than classic whiskey countries, like, well, say the US, Scotland, Ireland, Japan, and so on. And Dr. James Wan, for that purpose, developed a kind of cask that is called STR. It's actually not a kind of specific cask. It's a method that is supposed to take a cask and adjust it for a hotter climate. What happens is you take the cask and then you do 3 parts. You shave it. That's the S. STR, shave those 3 jars. So you shave it first. You just shave a few millimeters from the inside of the cask to expose a new layer of wood.
Then you toast it, you bring in a heating element, and you kind of sweat the wood to the point it browns out, caramelizes just a bit. That's, you know, to bring the vanillin closer to the outer layer. And then you re-char it in order to create both cracks in the wood, so the alcohol will seep further inside, and to create some charcoal to communicate with the ethanol inside and to mellow it down and to prevent some congeners that might occur. Charcoal is very good for that. And that method originally helped with adjusting red wine casks to hot climate, because what happens with red wine is that the sediments from the red wine are very acidic. And what happens is that if you age just on any cask of red wine in a hot climate, you'll get a very sour whiskey after a few years. So the STR actually helps with preventing that, but also offers an advantage of getting a much faster maturation. On the first year, you'll get a lot of flavor from the STR cask, and then it kind of balances out and mellows down. And after 3 years, you get the combination of spicy and sweet and oaky and vanilla, and just, you know, just a bit of that still wininess, but not overwhelmingly so.
Spiciness. And
yeah,
I think that for us as a young distillery, we're using most of those STR casks just to season the blend. So there's like 50% at the classic, and in the rest of the elements, we start with the same thing, and then we add another like 50% of the different elements. But we did discover it. You know, we were tasting it for the first year, you know, first 18 months, and it was really, you know, very effects, the wood effect and the STR method, you know, we really affected the spirit. But then the Americans, our American partners, asked to bottle single casks, and they were asking us to do an STR tasting. So we did an STR tasting, you know, just a blind tasting, and we discovered that after 3 years, it's great, because it, like Odette said, after the first year it balances, and then it adds some of the oxidation and some of the, you know, more calm characteristics that you get from the wood, because it has a fight. Actually the cask is fighting the spirit in the first year, and then they get along together. And I think that because of the Americans, we discovered the STR again, and there's few, you know, there's char number 1, char number 2, char number 3, and sometimes you get a second fill STR. So it's a whole world of discovering the flavors and the characteristics, and we just bottled a very, very good STR single cask for America. Maybe we're going to have a drink after we say we're going to have the fourth one, because when we started, so it's okay. Now it's only 11 o'clock in the morning. We have a few hours to drink.
Yeah. I would argue that it's already 11 in the morning. I actually had my morning coffee, and these are the consecutive drinks to my morning coffee. That makes total sense. Yeah.
Well, coffee is supposed to be a palate cleanser anyway. You just cleared your palate.
We adopted this method as well. Yeah, I agree, David. Totally agree.
I actually had so many emails to get back to, because I wasn't here yesterday. We went up north. There's a guy that distills every fruit in the world, and is doing all kinds of grappas and all kinds of, even bananas. It's great in Upper Galilee. So we went there because we were friends and we wanted to do something with crazy casks. And then we went to the Pomegranate winery. So I think I came back around 9 o'clock in the evening. That the first drink I had after coffee was distilled Gewürztraminer or something like that. So, so today I said, okay, it's a quiet day at work.
I think our diet, our liquid diet consists of mainly coffee and spirits, mostly spirits, then coffee. That it's to the point that when someone brings us a glass of water in the middle of the day, we drink just, ooh, that's exceptionally smooth, very well done. Vodka, that's nice.
So
there's a lot of the comments coming through saying that that you seem to downplay, not so much downplay, but saying that the classic is entry level. But a lot of people are saying that that's really for them so far the highlight. That it's really growing on them. They're getting a lot of coconut and peaches, and shows the essence of the distillery.
It is. There's no word for what we think about this whiskey. It's, entry level is Johnny Walker Red Label. This is not Johnny Walker Red Label. This is not an entry level, but it is for us. As Tomer says, it's a table whiskey. It's a whiskey that this is our way of whiskey making, and everyone can relate to this kind of whiskey. And then the elements adds another layer. So you can like the red wine, you can like the sherry or the peated, but I think the most, let's say, broad, base of comparison or base of people taste is the classics. So I think it's a crowd pleaser, and we like it. I think it's an everyday whiskey, but definitely not an entry level.
All right, should we get on to the sherry cask?
Yep.
Yeah, so speaking of crowd pleasers, let's do the sherry cask.
No sherry. Okay.
No sherry.
Yeah, let's have some more. No, I'll not get it. So we're moving on to the elements sherry. Now, a lot of our distillery kind of process has a lot to do with this combination of the traditional and the innovational. So
Traditional because we made the choice of being a distillery that follows the Scottish regulation in terms of what's called whiskey. Israel has zero regulation regarding, oh, thank you. There we go. Israel has zero
regulation regarding what's called whiskey or pretty much any other spirit. You could blend some water with some soap and call it whiskey in Israel, and nobody can legally hold it against you. We still made the choice of aging all of our spirits for at least 3 years before we call them whiskey. But we were posed with some challenges. One of them was to maintaining the kosher seal. From the beginning, we were a
kosher distillery. It's not something that is one of our leading flags, but it is something that we count as a very strong added value, and we want, as the first Israeli whiskey distillery, to appeal to the kosher keeping crowd, something that's important to us.
I think if you look at our ID card, so we are a craft distillery. We want to make the best whiskey we can. We are the craft distillery of the year, and we come from warm climate. We're from Tel Aviv, and then we are kosher. So I think that kosher is important for us. It's an added value for us. It's easier to do it here in Israel. The good thing about the Bible, that there was no whiskey production in the Bible because there was no regulations and laws about whiskey. But there were a lot regarding grapes and wine. So when we are using grape-based products for aging the casks, like sherry, red wines, it's not a problem. You have a lot of kosher wineries around in Israel. We even have kosher cognac casks from Godet, from La Rochelle in France, which they've been making kosher cognacs for the last, I think, 30 years, as well as the regular cognacs. So we have those too. But sherry is a different thing. You cannot make sherry in Israel, which is an authentic sherry. And I think there's not such a market for all Jewish ladies drinking kosher sherries. So it was probably, you know, we needed to do the whole thing from scratch. So it's a kind of we have our own seasoning project. Usually in our size of distilleries, you just buy a sherry cask from a broker, but sherry is wine, so it's not kosher. The big guys like Macallan, Glenlivet, and all of those, they have their own seasoning project. We had to do that. So we have a winery that makes kosher sherry in Jerez, Pedro Jimenez PX, the very sweet wine, and Oloroso, with a rabbi from Barcelona that comes twice a year to supervise the winemaking, and then it goes down to the cooperage that they have their own section for our casks. We're seasoning the cask for a year. We have two sizes, 250 liters hogsheads and 500 liters sherry butts with those two wines. And then we season them for a cask and bring it over empty. We don't know what they're doing with the wines. Probably distill it or just share, I don't know, just maybe sell it. Actually, last time we asked them to bring a few hundred bottles here. So we can just have a drink, I guess, or just a nice martini with the sherry.
It's very good PX. They make a very decent Pedro Jimenez.
But again, there's no market for it in Israel and probably not very much in the world. But the good thing about the upsize of this very expensive method is we know who the mother and the father of this cask, of the cask were. We know the quality of the wine, the quality of the cooperage, and the seasoning time. We don't just buy from a broker. We actually produce our own casks, season our own casks. And I think that when people are actually, you know, whiskey connoisseurs, they're tasting this whiskey, it's like an old style sherry whiskey. It's not a sherry bomb. It's not oversweet. And again, it's our house style, so it's balanced. You can feel it's a sherry one. It's going to be a very gentle one, a bit of sweetness, rich fruits, dried fruits, some cocoa powder or dark chocolate, some spiciness, very smooth, very drinkable. And like we said, it's the crowd pleaser. This was the first one from the three elements to go, to be bottled and to be launched as an expression. And we are really happy with this one. And I think that it's great to actually control everything, not because we control things, just because we can.
I think that in addition to that, it's a very good example to, it's another example of something that people told us was impossible and then we did it anyway. Yeah. Now, if you know Israelis, you know that the thing that drives us the most is telling us that something is impossible to do. So back in 2012, our founders said, we want to open an Israeli whiskey distillery. People told them that's impossible. They did it anyway. Then they told us, well, you can't make whiskey after you opened it. We did it anyway. And then they told us, well, you might be able to make whiskey, but you can't make sherry whiskey. We did it anyway. So
if you want an Israeli to do something, just tell them it's impossible.
Pretty much so. So yeah, if you have some more ideas for impossible things, please write them down in the chat and we'll defy the odds.
We actually can make everything happen, then we screw it. But first we're gonna make it.
Yeah, they told us we can't have a Jewish state in the Middle East back in 1947.
They were right.
They were right. We did it anyway. It's a beautiful mess, but we did it anyway. Why? Because they told us it was impossible.
So I can see that from the chat that most of the people love the sherry one. Again, as we said, Tio Pepe, yeah. No, it's not Tio Pepe. Actually, Tio Pepe, Gonzalo's Baez. Tio Pepe has a kosher Fino. We didn't use Fino until now, and they have like 2 or 3 casks. That's it. And believe me, I tried to get those casks from their Jewish importer to the States, and I couldn't because I didn't want to sell to the States through him. We work all over the world. We actually exported now in 22 markets outside Israel, and in every market we work not with the Jewish segment, because I know that from the wine industry, if you're stuck in the Jewish segment, you're going to be there with the kosher segment, and you go into Fifth Avenue, very fancy store. We have great wines in Israel, but they're going to be there next to the Manischewitz and the cheap arak and the vodka. We don't want to be there because we're making good whiskey. So this is why the Jewish community always, they discover us after that, but we are just a new world whiskey and the best craft producer of the year. Let's try the peated one.
Yeah. Before we move on to the peated one, David, the curiosity is telling me, what are you dressed up as?
Aha, and anybody can guess. Let's see what the audience thinks. And while they're trying to guess, the question. Firstly, someone made the observation that this is better than a previous sherry cask sample. Is the Elements sherry? Is that all out of one batch, or have you produced different batches so it would have changed from batch to batch? And the second question is,
it takes time to settle, and yeah, we because we have more sales at the moment than we're just waiting next to the casks and singing to the casks, please get older, because we have around 2,500 casks here in Tel Aviv. So usually we are just waiting for the cask to be 3.5 year old. So
it's still small batches, 5,000 bottles, 4,000 bottles, stuff like that. From June and up, we're gonna have much bigger batches. We prefer bigger batches because it's easier to work with in the blend. But yes, so probably if you tasted a different batch, it's not the same batch. I know that our partner in Australia always has 1 or 2 pallets, so we don't have a big batch. So next time when it goes down to Australia, it takes about 2.5 months or 3 months or something like that. So it was probably a different batch. We are learning all the time. We are doing better batches, better blends, and we are learning the cask and learning our climate all the time. So we are getting better with every batch, every time and again. So I guess you probably had 2 different batches the last time. Next batch is going to be even better.
Okay, now I don't know if you can see, but it's got the propeller on the hat. So that's one of the clues. And if you have been watched Alice in Wonderland, you can take your pick. I'm either Tweedledum or Tweedledee.
Oh, there we go. I actually tried to dress up as a Kozak.
It was supposed to go with a mustache and a beard, but that's 30 years of trying to grow
a mustache and a beard for me. So I guess I just look
like an old lady. That's also a costume for me. So I'm happy with the result.
You can see the sun is killing me now.
Oh yeah. Am I allowed to take this off yet?
No.
It's very
no. You've got another 15 minutes before you can take it off. And another question from the group is, are you doing or planning to do, and probably we'll get on to after we've done the peated, what your plans are for the future. But what about rum casks? Rum isn't grapes, so you don't have the same kashrut restrictions. Anything in the pipeline for rum casks?
So we do, if we have enough casks, we can do that in the core range, in the Elements. We don't have enough rum casks, but we have lots of Caribbean rums and Jamaican rums. I can tell you that we're going to talk about the next series, which is a small batch, as what we just launched, Rum Apex. Apex is the next series. I think it was blended from 5 different rum casks. 4 of them were Hampton, and one was Havana Club. And so it's, the Hamptons are funky. Havana Club is a kind of a bit on the sweeter note, and it was just such a great blend. So we are planning, but we're doing it not in this kind of scale. I cannot do 10,000 bottles of rum cask, but we're going to have some special editions and single cask from rum and from totally different range and spectrum of casks. We're going to talk about that. Mr. Gadget. Mr. Gadget. No, you're not Mr. Gadget. No, Inspector Gadget.
So I think we can move on to our last tasting for the day, which is the Elements Peated. Now here we see another good example of the combination between the tradition and the innovation in more than one sense. What we have here is, again, 50% of the classic composition, but the other 50% is a combination of our peated new make, which is kind of a rare thing. We do only 2 weeks or let's say 4 weeks annually of peated distillations in the distillery. We do mostly unpeated malt, but the other part of that 50% is ex-Isla casks that we buy directly from Isla, from distilleries like Lefroy and Ardbeg, and those casks aged peated whiskies for a lot of years, between 8 to, I think the oldest one we had was 27 years of aging a peated whiskey. And what happens is that we take those casks. Strangely enough, it's not very common to use these casks in the industry. So we take these casks and we age our unpeated new make inside them to get the flavors that the peated whiskey embedded into those casks. And what we get is that balance between the sweet, the earthy, the herbal, the zesty, and just a very mild peat. What we were aiming to do here is to create a mildly peated expression.
I think there's, when you look at our peated barley, peated spirit, until now we brought the peated barley from the Czech Republic and not from the UK, not from Scotland. So it's a different kind of peatiness, different kind of smokiness. It's more herbal, it's more grassy. And then when you use those kind of old casks from Isla, which the distilleries in Isla had, it's an exhausted cask for them. But for us, with our climate, it's just starting, because it's, you know, it expands, the liquid just takes a lot of sense. And we, you know, old Islas tend to be not very smoky. They are peated, but they're not very smoky because they're like some kind of doing that. And then, but they're leaving a lot in the cask. So this, we're talking about the 27-year-old Lafroig. I know the whiskey. It wasn't a peat bomb, but when we started, it took all the peat back to the spirit. But here, I think the combination between a little bit of peated, it's a peated spirit in an ex-bourbon cask, and non-peated spirit in an ex-Isla cask. So if you take this together, you get I think a gateway for peated whiskeys. It's a lightly peated whiskey, and someone that is afraid of peated whiskeys, this is the way to go. We can actually show him how you can get some of those characteristics and not be overwhelmed by the peatiness and the smokiness or the maritime sense or everything. So I think it's a nice balanced, lightly peated whiskey, and we like it. It's fine.
As a fan of peated whiskies, I have to say that it's a while since I've revisited this, and I think this is fantastic. I think it's reminiscent of some of the Highland peat, and even possibly with that sweetness, something like the Ailsa Bay, quite a new lowland from William Grant. It's become my favorite. The sherry was my favorite. I'm afraid it's taken second place. And this is fantastic. And just a general knowledge question is that as far as there's only 4 distilleries, including Milk and Honey, that I know that use peated casks rather than peated barley. Anybody can guess or know of others that do this? I'd say there's very few, but let's see if anybody can pick some others that do this technique.
I was just telling Tal that I know more
Gin distilleries that actually use those casks rather than whiskey distilleries that do the same thing.
Okay, somebody said Cavalin. Yes, that's one of them. Obviously, there's the Jim Swan influence there. 2 others that I know of that have used this in the past. They're both Scottish.
So Tomatin is one.
Yes, that's excellent.
With
yep.
Kobuchen.
Yep.
And I think that actually Isle of Arran is doing that too. And I know Penderyn is using those too.
The other one I know of is Glenrothes.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But yeah, Tomatin is doing that for the Kobuchen range. So it's but it's totally different than what we get here. It's like when you use an STR in Kilchoman or in Britain, when you use it in England for Cotswold, you taste the same. You know, we have the same the same cooperage in Spain and or Portugal, and then
it's amazing to see how the climate really affects the maturation of the whiskey with the same types of casks. Someone was asking about the pomegranate wine cask. Yeah, so I was there yesterday at the Pomegranate Winery. So, you know, we use a lot of pomegranates in our everyday diet. We drink pomegranate juice, we eat it in salads, and of course, then Rosh Hashanah, in Jewish New Year's, we have to eat pomegranate seeds. And there's a winery in Israel that makes wines, only fruit wines, only from pomegranates, from dry wines to fortified sweet wines, port style, and rosé wines, and all. They're making lots of cosmetics too from the grains. And we are using those casks. We came there, and you know they don't have vintages because you know it's not a wine. So we took their cask. We have a few different wine varieties casks, and the first one we actually bottled was a blend. I think it was around 6 months or 8 months in a pomegranate wine cask finish after it was in a bourbon cask. And we blended some, I think, 5-6 casks from, most of them were the sweet wines, the sweet pomegranate wines, and some of that was just a dry wine. And before we even bottled it, it was already sold out to America. And we had some, I think we have few hundred bottles in Europe, all the rest was to the American market. We're gonna bottle the next batch in about 6 weeks or something like that, which is, I think it's a better one. You get a lot of tartiness and some tannins from the pomegranate, which I can recognize in a second because this is, you know, it's a pomegranate, it's sweet and sour. And you get into the whiskey, and it's amazing. It's something that, first of all, it's a part of our DNA. You know, it's an Israeli whiskey, so you're looking for something like that. And the second thing, that it was just so interesting, so earthy, a lot of earthiness and fruitiness from the fruit itself, and then of course some tannins and spiciness. And I think we just won another medal, but we best in category gold medal. We just didn't get which category was that, but it was so we got another again. We forgot about that. It was another Thursday night, so of course we went drinking till 5 o'clock in the morning, and but yeah, it's a very, very interesting. I know that Ian, my partner, my importer in Australia, really is waiting for this one. I just offered him the rum one. But we're gonna keep some. We're gonna keep some of those pomegranate wine casks or bottles for you guys, because it's a crazy one. It is a crazy one. Next batch is gonna be different because we are playing with different kind of casks. The whole series about our crazy way of thinking about being the fun thing about being a craft distillery, that we can try. We don't need to do everything the same all the time. So we have a core range, which you just tasted, and then we have all kinds of crazy stuff. So it was in the first batch we actually bottled cognac finish, kosher cognac finish cask, a pomegranate wine cask, a fully matured whiskey in a Chardonnay cask for 3.5 years, one of the best wineries in Israel, Castel. So we took his Chardonnay, and it was a crazy whiskey again. And it disappeared. So it's small batches from around 900 bottles to probably 2,050, 2,500 or 3,000 bottles altogether in every batch. Very high ABV, around 60 most of the time. And now we just bottled the Caribbean rum casks. Next thing is going to be Israeli fortified style wines and peated spirit in an STR cask. And then again, cognac, pomegranate. And eventually in June, I think we're going to release the first batch from the Dead Sea. And we have 30 casks at the Dead Sea. If we're talking about around 11% angel share in Tel Aviv, which is crazy a lot. The Dead Sea is 25% angel share. So we do only 1 year there, get it back to Tel Aviv. But if you taste the same cask, the same filling day, the same type of cask, one in the Dead Sea and another one here at the Med Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, they're going to be totally different even after maybe 4-5 months. It's crazy. I just tasted one of the casks from the Dead Sea. I think it's around 2 years now. It was a Pinot Noir cask, and it just blew my mind. So it's not even whiskey. So we are planning to do that, or just maybe empty bottles with 100% angel share from the Dead Sea and send it over. It's going to be probably less taxation. Yeah, so this is what we are doing this year, all kinds of small batches, crazy stuff alongside with our core range around, who's, I love Haman, you're doing the best job here. So I think that, I think that on the next half, we're going to release another tea, which is single casks that we are going to pick in the Apex series. They're going to be more from the core range, so ex-bourbon, ex-Isla, STRs, sherry cask, which Tomer and myself, we're going to pick them together. We actually picked 3 of those already, and they're going to come in a black bottle, something just to differentiate from the rest of the crazy stuff. So small batches are the crazy thinking, and the best one we can get from the core range, from the core range of cask is going to be the single cask, and all the rest is just the classic and the elements, guys.
One question, talking about doing the impossible. When we can travel again, the distillery, as a visitor center, do you do tours? Have you still been open for locals?
Right, so actually we received word in the, oh yeah, there we go. This is our visitor center. And I can share that just yesterday evening,
Again, everything happens in the evening for some reason. We go to sleep and then they tell us that something miraculous has happened. So they told us that we will be allowed to reopen our visitor center for the locals next week.
Yeah. It should be said, it's only for the vaccinated personnel, what we call the green badge here in Israel. But we are very happy to reopen the visitor center because I think that in the whiskey industry and the spirits industry in general.
See, we got this. This is the green badge. You walk with that with your phone. They're going to scan it. You're okay. You got 2 vaccinations, and then 14 days afterwards, you got this.
I think what we do is more about people than anything else. And we're just really happy to accept people here and show them around and let them drink our whiskey and interact with them again, because that's why we are all in this job to begin with. So
I think pre-COVID time, we had around 1,000 people every month. We got English tours. You have few kinds of tours. You have just to do the blending, just to see the production or taste from the cask, or just for nice cocktail. It's the only open bar in Tel Aviv at the moment, so we're drinking a lot here. So yeah, it's there's a lot of tours. So please come over. Just get your green passport.
We'll be happy to have you. Sincerely, we will.
Great. We're pretty much at the hour mark. We like to keep our these sessions to around about an hour. But if there's any last questions for Oded and Tal, no, thanks guys for your time. I know you've got a lot of work to do making great whiskeys for us. We don't want to keep you from that for too much longer. This has been recorded and will be on our YouTube channel, the Whiskey List YouTube channel. If you haven't visited that, there's hundreds and hundreds of tasting videos, all our Game of Drams, all the videos from our virtual whiskey shows, and all from our tastings. So
someone's talking about the gin, and yeah, thank you. We really like our gin. Thank you. So is the guy that makes the gin. And,
yes, there's the Levantine and the oak aged gins, which are absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to some other. Any plans for a pomegranate gin, perhaps?
Whoa, that's an idea. That's an idea right there. I mean, if Tal can get me the casks, I can get him the gin.
We just did
your virtual tasting. The gin. I did your virtual gin tasting. Really nice. I bought some. Really nice.
Thank you so much.
We just bottled one of them. We just bottled 2 gins. One was a Navy strength for Taiwan. They asked for a Navy strength, and the other one was a Peated Cask gin. which mostly it was supposed to be sold here at the visitor center because it was a special edition. It's amazing for a peated Negroni. And so the rest I sent to Taiwan because they're crazy about that. Maybe we'll do that with the Pomegranate wine cask.
Worthwhile.
Fantastic.
So, any other questions? Sorry, David.
Yep. No, that's exactly what I was going to say. Any last things? Then we can carry on enjoying your fantastic whiskies in preparation for Purim. So, Chag Sameach, everybody. And hopefully we look forward to the next range of interesting whiskies coming out of Milk and Honey.
Thank you so much, guys.
It's been great.
Thanks.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.